think that's a great idea. Thank you. Today I want to talk about the roots of modern Mexico. Well, it was 1519. The age of imperialism was off and rolling, and you know what happened in imperialism. The Spanish, well, not Spanish, but European countries would overtake other places of the world, and they would end up ruling them for long periods of time. And that's exactly what happened in Mexico. In 1519, the Spanish government sent Hernan Cortez to the New World. Now, you can see a picture of Hernan Cortez here. And just like you would expect, he overtook Mexico. He and his soldiers landed there. And this was Aztec country. You may remember the Aztecs. And their Aztecs were led by their leader, Montezuma II, in fact. Now, this was no small group of Native Americans. The Aztecs were a compilation of 5 to 6 million people. But not all of those people were happy, and some of them would actually help Cortez take over Montezuma. Montezuma welcomed this stranger with gifts. Montezuma allowed him to stay at the capital. Now, you may remember that the capital was Tenochtitlan. Which is in present-day Mexico City. Within a week, Spanish would have taken over the capital. Spanish not only had an advantage in help from some of Montezuma's people, but their weapons, the Spanish weapons, were remarkably more advanced. The Aztecs had clubs and spears and arrows, but the Spanish soldiers had swords and guns and cannons and horses. It was really no contest. Cortez conquered the land for Spain, and Spain controlled Mexico for the next 300 years. And they called this area New Spain. Mexico would endure a clash of cultures. And you can imagine what a clash it was, having these foreigners that suddenly had taken over. The Spanish leaders introduced new animals, pigs, sheep, cattle, horses that the natives did not know. They introduced a new religion, Christianity, that they did not know. They introduced a new language, Spanish, that they did not know. Spain also brought in slaves from conquered African lands. So you had another culture that was being blended together, along with Native American and Spanish culture. And throughout all this came the caste system, the Mexican class system. Now I'm going to put this pen up, and I have these out of order. Oh, what did I do here? I have these out of order, but we're going to put these in the correct order. The top of the class system was the Peninsulares. These were people who were from back home in Spain, from the Iberian Peninsula. They would turn out to be the ruling class. So the ones that ruled over Mexico were not native Mexicans. They were people from Spain, the Peninsulares. Next, underneath that on the list, on the social order, was the Criollos. The Criollos were born in Mexico, but their parents were from Spain. So you can see kind of a pattern here, that people who were from Spain were looked on more favorably than those who were not from Spain. Underneath there you have the Mestizos. You can imagine they had something to do with Spain. They were people who had heritage from Spain and from North America. Maybe their parents were split, one native and one from Spain. And underneath that were the African slaves. The African slaves were higher on the social order than even the natives were. Now you can imagine that did not sit well, but it lasted for many, many, many years. Now, I want to kind of give you an idea as to about the percentages of people. Only about 0.3% of all people in Mexico were the Peninsulares. And it was this less than 1% that did all the ruling, that did all the government. You had, the next was about 20%. After a while, you did have many people who were born in the New World, whose parents were from the Old World. Underneath that, you had about 13% that were the mix of the Old World and the New World, mestizos. African slaves had the smallest percentage, only about 0.2%, about as much as the Peninsulares. And you can imagine by far the highest percentage of people were the ones who were there in the first place. The ones who were natives or their parents were natives, about 67%. Now that actually adds up to about 100.5%. Where you can take off stuff is from the mestizos. There's actually 12 point something percent there. But the rulers of Spain set up this system where the ones that were from Spain or the ones who had heritage in Spain were the highest of classes. And you know, this would turn out to last for a long, long time. And it would be dampening the Mexican spirit, I guess you might say, even into the 1900s. Now, the rulers of Spain did set up a system called the encomienda. Now, this is where Spanish men, now this of course were Peninsulares, were each given a village to oversee. Now, people in the village had to pay a tribute. Now, that's not just bowing down and honoring them, that's giving them something. So all the people in the town had to give this Peninsulare some money, some goods, maybe even some labor. So you can imagine that the Spanish men were very wealthy, and they were very powerful. At Tenochtitlan, the Spanish were given a drink, a thick, smooth drink that was bitter, but it also had chili pepper and vanilla in it, kind of a big mixture. Now, this drink was consumed by the Aztec at a very high rate. A very high rate. In fact, it's said that Montezuma had 50 cups of it a day, and you can see a picture right here of the beans that this comes from. The drink came from the seeds of the cacao plant, C-A-C-A-O plant. These are cacao beans, C-A-C-A-O. And they were called chocolatl, which of course comes from chocolate. Our chocolate comes from it. Chocolatl. Now, at the time, this chocolate was not sweet. It was kind of bitter, but they could tell that there was something with this that they liked, and the Aztecs liked it as well. So these things, of course, would be brought back home to Europe, where they would sweeten it to become chocolate. You can see the questions we have down here. Number 1, what Spanish explorer came to Mexico in 1519? Number 2, Montezuma was the leader of what tribe? Number 3, what kind of weapons did the Spanish have? Number 4, what did Spain call Mexico? Number 5, what 5 Mexican classes were from the highest to the lowest? Name those 5 Mexican classes. Number 6, can you explain that encomienda system? Well, I hope you learned a little bit about Mexico.